Hello everyone and welcome back to the Sports with Frank podcast, another review episode today with the Bundesliga that's getting closer to its end, only 4 games left, so we'll analyze the main game of the weekend. In my opinion, that was the Bayer Leverkusen Bayern Munich game that happened on Saturday, and then we're gonna start our discussion about the other leagues that are returning. La Liga is coming back this week, so we're gonna have an overview of what's going on there, where we start from. Let's dive right into it. This is the Sports with Frank podcast. I'm Francesco. Let's do this. Another weekend has gone, and it seems like yesterday that we've been talking about the restart of the Bundesliga and then what we could expect from the league, the race at the top, Bayern Munich seeming like they were gonna win, but there were teams behind, Leipzig, Borussia. However, we're here talking today, and the title is probably a closed book. Bayern are too far away. Mathematically speaking, they could still lose the title, but if we look at it from a perspective of what can actually happen, I find it unlikely that they will lose any games. In my opinion, probably the hardest one they have is going to be this weekend when they're going to be playing Borussia Mönchengladbach. But let's say they lose that one, they still have 4 points over Borussia Dortmund. So overall, the title race is probably over. However, there's a very interesting race going on now. That's the race for that third, fourth spot. That's of course useful for European qualification. And down at the bottom as well, where the third spot for relegation, the one that's going to be decided by a playoff game between the third to last team in the Bundesliga and the third team in Zweite Bundesliga. That's also an interesting race going on. And, I just want to say that with more leagues coming back, the Bundesliga is probably going to lose some of its appeal that it has had over these 4 weeks because, of course, that was the only football we had going. But I think there is still something to look forward to, and I think there's going to be an interesting set of matchups that we'll be able to watch together with other leagues. So let's get into the review of the game that I called the game of the week for this past weekend. That was the Bayer Leverkusen Bayern Munich game. Right, first of all, I want to say something. I talked about in this podcast how bad the back three defense is, especially if you don't have the players. And when I was watching Bayer Leverkusen, I just couldn't stop thinking about how wrong their whole set was against this Bayern Munich team. They went with the back three defense that, in my opinion, didn't have any chance to stop Bayern Munich. Their idea going into the game was to stop them with in the middle of the pitch, letting Bayern play on the side. And if they had to win, they were gonna win with their wingers and left back and right backs. And honestly, I feel like against a team like Bayern, that's a complete opposite of what you should do. Bayern is a team that has the best talent probably on the wingers. Yes, they had Lewandowski and Müller in the middle, but Müller is not a player anymore that can take the ball at midfield and take it forward and make a play. He's a player that in the box can be very, very dangerous, and is shown in this game as well because of his ability to make passes that are somehow impressive for a player of his size, and that's definitely some of his skills that are not gonna fade with age. But of course, athleticism and a certain progression is gone by now. So when you face a team like Bayern, what you should do, you should really try and focus on stopping Gnabry or Coman, Alphonso Davies, Pavard, and they didn't do that at all. They played with midfielders and strikers on the wing, and I think they were out of position completely. And of course, they didn't have Kai Havertz. In the last podcast, I talked about how excited I was to see Havertz in this game because I thought it could be, a breakout game for him more than he's had before, because this was an elite team. And if Bayer Leverkusen were able to make a push to beat Bayern Munich, I thought that Kai Havertz would have been an incredibly important piece in the game plan that they were going to put up. He wasn't there. He was replaced by Alario. He scored a goal. The Argentine, good player, but let's be honest, he's a reserve. That's not a way to put it. He's a guy that can help you out, but it's definitely not the kind of player that's gonna make other coaches go we have to do everything we can to stop him. And at the end of the day, he scored a goal. lucky really, because Bayern were trying to play with the offside. It didn't work. He found himself 1-1 against Neuer. It's a good place with the ball for him. He plays the ball very well, but after that it didn't really do much. I actually thought that he was one of the worst players on the pitch. And when a team loses 4-2, it's hard to find a worse player in that team. But I think Alario was probably one of the worst. On the other hand, I thought that some other players were pretty good considering the result, and there was Bellarabi that, in my opinion, was the best for Leverkusen in this game, together with Baumgartl there, a player that's very reliable player. He's been in the Bundesliga for a long time now. It was an interesting stat that he was the captain of Bayer Leverkusen on Saturday, and when he was playing for them, when he played for them as a captain, they never lost a game. Unfortunately, that streak was ended by Bayern Munich this weekend, but another solid player, and I think for a team like Leverkusen, that's the kind of guy that can give balance, and I wouldn't be surprised if going forward he's still an important piece of this team, because I think it proved to be valuable over the weekend. So overall, a poor performance by Leverkusen, because they got the first goal in randomly, as I said, and then they closed themselves down, let Bayern play with his best players on the wing, and couldn't stop them. It lasted for 20 minutes, and then Bayern was all over them. And against a team like this, if you let them, if you leave them space to attack, very much like Dortmund did, they're gonna destroy you. And as I said, lasted for about half an hour, and then Bayern managed to score 3 goals in the rest of the first half. They scored another one with Lewandowski in the second half, and then Bayer Leverkusen had that second goal by a guy that I think people should be looking at very closely from now, the rest of this season, but most importantly next season, especially if Havertz were to leave, and that is Wirtz. The guy came over from Cologne in January, is a very young player, 17 years old, more of a promise than anything else at the moment. But I mean, he came in and he's been coming in regularly over the course of these few games that we've been seeing of Bayer Leverkusen. And to be honest, I feel like he could actually become an important piece of this team in a year or so. I could see him actually be critical for this team by next season. So, interesting player. I think we'll be hearing a lot about this guy going forward. As I said, especially if Havertz were to leave, because he plays more or less the same position that, center attacking mid, could actually step in as a center forward, as a false nine, in my opinion. Is physically speaking, is not as it's not as big as Kai Havertz. It's a small guy. I don't think he goes over 1.80 meters. So it's about 5'10", something like that. So it's not really as big as Kai Havertz, but can actually, play the ball very similar to what the German does. So a player to look forward to, and I think coming out of this game, that's probably the only bright spot that I can see in Bayer Leverkusen. That seems like between them and Borussia Mönchengladbach, none of these teams wants to go to the Champions League, because Mönchengladbach drew against Freiburg in the first game of the weekend on Friday. Leverkusen had an incredible chance to get up over Mönchengladbach and pull away. They didn't do that, and now Mönchengladbach has this game against Bayern this coming weekend, where Bayern is going to play without Lewandowski and Thomas Müller. Both were booked over the weekend, so they're going to skip the next game. And this is a big chance for Mönchengladbach, and Leverkusen may regret not putting much of a fight against Bayern Munich, because this was a tough game. We talked about how Bayern was going to this game being extremely favourite, and Leverkusen had 0 to no chance to pull away with the victory. But nonetheless, having no expectations and no pressure on them, I thought it was going to play out differently. It did not. Bayern came out with a victory, and now Leverkusen in a situation where they have to, they don't control their own destiny, because if Borussia Mönchengladbach wins every game, they'll be qualifying, and Bayer Leverkusen will stay out of the Champions League. And for them, especially in a moment where they want to keep their young talent, and above all, of course, Kai Havertz, that I believe that he would stay if they would go to a Champions League, if you get the Champions League qualification. But I don't think he will stay if they manage to screw this up and only qualify for Europa League, because this is a young talent that definitely wants to play in the biggest stage. I think for his career, it would be best if he stays another year in Leverkusen. But let's be honest, like Leverkusen wouldn't be able to offer him what other clubs could offer, even like second level. Like if Tottenham comes in with an offer for him, and Tottenham managed to go to Champions League, I have no doubt that he would go and accept that offer. And at the same time, you have another talent in Bailey that probably wasn't, it wasn't as good as I would expect him to be the other day against Bayern Munich. But I think you can see that he has the talent that it takes to be a good player, probably a great player, because the way he treats the ball, the way he kicks, it touches it all over the place. I think it just shows that he has the talent that it takes. So a team could come in and put the money on the line for the talent more than what the player is at this moment. But that's another guy that without a Champions League qualification, he'll probably be gone. Leverkusen also has that semi-final of German Cup coming up tomorrow, and after that they're playing Schalke, not a great team, Köln, not a great team, Hertha, that we talked about how they're in pretty good form, even though they lost against Borussia Dortmund. I think they proved that they're a very tough team to play against. So that will be a hard matchup for Leverkusen, and they close down the season in Mainz, which we don't know what's going to happen with them. They could be still fighting for not being relegated. They are doing quite well. They're 3 points ahead of Fortuna Düsseldorf at the moment. But they go play that game, last game of the season, could be win or lose, and for both teams. So that's another tricky game that Leverkusen has on the schedule. While Borussia Mönchengladbach, as we said, they have the Bayern Munich game coming up. And then they're playing Wolfsburg, pretty good team. Then at Paderborn, a team that's probably going to be relegated by the time they play. And then they close out the season against Hertha Berlin, a team that at that point could be out of any competition. So both teams have a relatively hard schedule. As I said, it seems like none of them is trying to win the games that they can win to make it to the Champions League. So it's going to be interesting to see what's happening there. And that's probably right now the most interesting thing to watch out in the Bundesliga, considering that Bayern Munich is probably, as I said, going to run out with the title. Leipzig is also in that race for the third and fourth spot, but at this point they're drawing every game. But I think it's more being unlucky than anything. They've been hit with some injuries. Poulsen, the starting striker, has been out for 2 games now. Sabitzer wasn't playing this past weekend. Upamecano was ejected, so he's not going to be playing next week. So I think like they're risking as well, but I think overall they're the best team, and I think they will be able to pull out with at least the third spot in the table. So the real fight is there between Mönchengladbach and Leverkusen. And then we have Bayern Munich, and I don't think there is much to say about them in the sense that they're extremely good. This is a team that, honestly, I remember watching them at the beginning of the season. Kovac was still the coach, and they weren't doing well. And it wasn't just the results. Like, the team wasn't playing for the coach. You can tell when the team is not giving 110% for their coach, and that's what was happening there. Since Flick has come over, they're definitely playing much better. He put the history, the legends of this team on the page. Thomas Müller, that wasn't playing much before, he's now a central piece there. He recorded his 20th assist of the season. That's breaking the record that was established by Kevin De Bruyne at his time at Wolfsburg. He's probably gonna surpass that. Still have 4 games to go. And then Boateng, a guy that seemed to be out of the project completely. It's now the starting centre back for this team, and he's playing solid. Alaba moved to centre back, another guy that has been extremely solid for a guy that's playing out of position. So he made these little moves that brought in that that quality, but at the same time, those players are used to win and know how to win. The experience is always something important, the balance of a team. You can have a lot of young players, but you need these experienced players just there to lead the way. So I think overall Bayern is probably going to be one of the favorites whenever we do a preview for the Champions League. That for now it seems to be coming back in August. There's nothing official yet. It's been news that it's going to be a final 4, final 8, very similar to what the EuroLeague is doing in basketball. All games will be played in Lisbon. Seems like an interesting scenario, especially because it's going to be single game elimination games. We never know what happens. We could have a lot of surprises there, but I think if Bayern managed to keep this form until then, because let's remember that Bayern will probably they will be done with all their games by the beginning of July. So that's going to be interesting to see if we manage to keep the form until August, because not playing for a month is going to be causing some trouble there. But if they do, this is a team that could definitely go and win it all. They have the talent that it takes. They have a coach that honestly it's not one of these flashy names, but to be honest, he's doing everything right. He's not messing around with formation. He's always going for his best. Goretzka has been incredible since the return of the Bundesliga. He's been amazing. This was a guy that felt like a lost promise before, but now it seems like he's fulfilling his destiny to be one of these German youngsters that are gonna be playing for their national team for a long time. And as classic as it is, he's also gonna be probably a pivotal image and presence in that Bayern Munich locker room. And another guy that I think I've talked about a lot before, but I think he deserves to be talked about more and more, because I tweeted during the game that I think Alphonso Davies, by in 5 years' time, 2025, is going to be, in my opinion, the best left back or right back, just fullback in general, best fullback in the world. And I say 5 just to to get some room to work with there, but I wouldn't be surprised if it were to be 3 years, because I like Hakimi, but I think that Alphonso Davies just has incredible speed. This is a guy that honestly, when he runs, it seems like he runs the the 100 meters run with Usain Bolt. He's just so quick, and with the ball as well, and his ability to get forward, but at the same time be extremely efficient in defense. Playing in a back four defense that doesn't really give him any cover, especially playing on that side with Serge Gnabry, that it's a striker basically playing on the wing. On the other hand, with Hakimi, he's playing more of a right wing back, so he has a lot of coverage behind him with Lucas Piszczek. That Davies doesn't have that, and it just doesn't make mistakes, and he's always there whenever it's needed. He makes the right defensive play all the time, the right offensive play all the time, and I think this guy is gonna be amazing. So not much to say about Bayern apart from the fact that, in my opinion, right now they are probably the best team in Europe. We'll see when other leagues come back if anybody can get close. But if somebody asked me now, I would say that Bayern Munich are the favorite to win this Champions League, 100%. Now that that's out of the way, it's time to focus on other leagues, because it's here. This is the week. The La Liga is coming back on Thursday. The Serie A with the Coppa Italia games first, and then the league games coming over, starting as well next week. But nonetheless, more and more games are adding up, and it's an exciting time. And I felt like today was going to be a perfect day to have an overall what's going on in La Liga before we dive into analyzing the actual games on Wednesday's episode. First, let's get into the La Liga bit, because I think for the first time in a few years there is so much to fight for, and this is a league that after Ronaldo left, it kind of lost some of its appeal, because the main story every year going into La Liga season was who's going to win this year, Ronaldo or Messi. That's always the matchup that everybody is looking forward to at the beginning of every season, and this is the second year in a row that that's not going to happen. I don't know if they're going to face off in the Champions League, but nonetheless, La Liga lost that appeal of the two legends colliding. But that doesn't mean that just because a guy leaves, that doesn't make the championship less interesting. Because just to confirm that, even without Ronaldo, Real Madrid are only 2 points behind Barcelona. It's not like they are 10 points behind. They were not doing great at the beginning of the season. That's the thing. But they're now being able to get back there, and with 11 games left, so there is a long way to go, and they could win easy. I think Barcelona is in a situation now. I watched them against Napoli right before the lockdown, where I felt like Barcelona is not the Barcelona we used to know. It's been a few years now, especially in the Champions League. It was clear, because in La Liga they always managed to get, towards the end, they're always fighting for the first position. But when you then look at the Champions League, it was quite clear to me how, after losing Xavi, after losing Iniesta, two world-class players, they haven't managed to replace them properly. And also losing Neymar, that was another blow for them, because if you look at who they tried to replace him with, they went for Dembele, Coutinho for high amounts of money. Probably wasted money. Especially Dembele is still very young, a lot of injuries there, but I think he has a lot of talent that he'd probably be able to succeed regardless of injuries. It's just a matter of him being able to stay on the pitch. Coutinho, with hindsight, if you look at what Coutinho was considered to be when he left Liverpool, everybody here in Liverpool was kind of devastated that he went because he was considered to be the main star and the guy that could take them to a Premier League. But looking at now, he was probably the guy that was holding them back. After losing Coutinho, last year, 2 years ago, Champions League final. Last year they won the Champions League. This year, 99.9% they're going to win the Premier League. And Coutinho left and they improved massively. Of course, that was also because they managed to bring in a guy like Salah. They hasn't really performed any less compared to what Coutinho did. Actually, he performed much better than what the Brazilian did. So they tried to replace Neymar with these two guys that didn't work out. They tried to bring in Griezmann over this summer. In my opinion, he scored. It's already double-digit goals, but to be honest, I don't think he's fitting in there at all. And it's crazy to say, but I think the reason why Barca are not going to be able to get back to top European level for a long time is because of Leo Messi. We all know Leo Messi is an incredible player, and I love watching him play. But his presence in the team and his influence, especially at higher up levels, so with the general director and people in charge of transfers, it is so big that it's eventually going to lead Barcelona to a position when he retires where they don't have any assets. Because if you look at what Barcelona are doing, they're trying to bring in old players to win now, like Vidal. They kept Rakitic over the summer as well, even though he's probably done for the peak of his career. He stayed over, and Messi doesn't like Griezmann. There are voices of him not liking Coutinho with that Brazilian-Argentinian storyline going there. So it seems like he only wants his friends to play like Luis Suarez, that has been an incredible striker, but let's be honest, he's not anymore. Luis Suarez is not as good as he used to be, and right now, if I were a coach, I would play Griezmann over Luis Suarez every day of the week. But that's not going to happen because Messi is best friend with Suarez, and Suarez is never going to be benched if he's fit. So what's going to happen eventually is that Messi will retire and Barcelona won't have any assets. I heard today there was apparently an offer for Ansu Fati for £100 million by Manchester United. I've heard that it wasn't accepted by Barcelona. Barcelona had no intention to sell him. But I'm telling you, if there were a chance to get a Neymar or Lautaro Martinez for Ansu Fati, I wouldn't be surprised if they said yes. Because Messi wants Lautaro Martinez to Barcelona because he's Argentinian, and he wants Neymar to Barcelona because they're friends. But look at what they will cost them. When you already have a team with Antoine Griezmann that is considered one of the best strikers, he won a World Cup, he was a superstar at Atletico Madrid, so it's just a matter of putting him in the right position to play his best. We're not talking about a player that was confused for a superstar and is actually a bust. Griezmann will play in every other team in the world at its best, and it's not doing so at Barcelona because I think it's held back by the presence of Messi. So I think there's this situation going on at Barcelona with also knowing what's happening with their front office. There's a lot of speculation saying that Barcelona are in trouble financially. So I don't have the specifics on that, but I can tell you that going back into this season with all these games that had to be played back to back, or within 3 weeks we had to play like 7-8 games. I think that could go in favor of Real Madrid. Absolutely. Real Madrid is a very complete team, and it's a team where after losing Ronaldo, they gave a lot of space to the young talent. Of course, they brought in Hazard, but if you look at Rodrigo and Vinicius, all this young talent that was brought in because, very different to what Barcelona are doing. They're trying to stay relevant, but at the same time building for the future. So they're not bringing in old players at all. They have Hakimi in the pipeline. As soon as the season is over, he's going to go back there. I don't know who's going to play in the right side, but it's definitely a good time to have in your ranks. And overall, I would say Real Madrid is a better team. And I'm not afraid of saying that. I know that Messi makes a lot of difference, but if I look at the rest of the pitch, fullbacks, I take Real Madrid all day. Centre backs is Real Madrid. You might take Ter Stegen over Courtois, but then that would be fair. Midfield, take out De Jong. I would take Casemiro over Sergio Busquets, and I would take Toni Kroos over any of the other midfielders in Barcelona apart from De Jong. And then up top, Benzema is still scoring goals left and right. As I said, Suarez, in my opinion, is a done footballer. He should probably go back to South America. So I have no doubt I would take Benzema over Luis Suarez. Hazard, I would take him over whoever is played on the right side of Barcelona. And then, of course, you have Messi that you take at Barcelona. But overall, 3 out of 11 players that could play, in my opinion, in Real Madrid and not vice versa. So now more than ever, I think Real Madrid has an edge. And, they won the Clásico. Last time they played, it was a 2-0 victory. And I think they showed that they're a better team. And I think eventually this will come, it will shine even more with the rest of the season. Because, as I said, I think these internal shenanigans that are going on at Barcelona will have an impact on the team. And I think that Real Madrid will play quite free because they're probably going to come out of the Champions League with their bones broken, but they don't have to play that until August. So from now on, they only have to focus on the La Liga, knowing that, since they lost Ronaldo, they don't have that feeling of always having to win because their supporters have won enough over the years, and they, if they win, that's a plus. But I don't think supporters in Madrid believe that they would have to win every year, especially after losing the best player in the world and rebuilding effectively. And so we'll see what happens. But I strongly believe that Real Madrid are favored in that race. And it doesn't stop there because this table is extremely interesting. So listen to this: from the 3rd spot to the 7th spot, it's 5 points. We're going Seville, Real Sociedad, Getafe, Atletico Madrid, and Valencia. All these 5 teams could get a spot in the Champions League. Now, Seville is a team that over the years they've been doing incredible in the Europa League. Of course, they're one of these teams that over the past 10 years was one of the most consistent ones. The latest one they won, I believe, was the final against Liverpool in 2016, where they managed to lift the trophy. And it's a team that's always done well in Europa League. Not as much in the Champions League. A few years ago, they managed to kick out Manchester United, but that was about it for them in their run. So I think they would be the less interesting team if I had to pick one team to go and qualify for the Champions League. But for instance, there's the Real Sociedad team that I'm actually enjoying quite a bit, especially for the presence of Martin Odegaard in that team. Now, he is on loan from Real Madrid. He's one of these guys that how they come out when they're extremely young and they're 16 years old and people are already talking about them and YouTube videos and big contracts with Nike or Adidas. And I think they ruined him at the beginning of his career, but he has been extremely good this season with 4 goals, 5 assists for a team that really, in terms of talent, it's not like they have this much of top players, but they have a lot of these failed promises, as I like to call them. They have Adnan Januzaj, another one of these guys that he came out at Manchester United. Everybody thought he was going to be the next Ronaldo. Didn't really pan out that much. Alexander Isak, a Swedish striker that by many was considered the new Ibrahimovic. You know how they like to call everybody as the new someone else. Well, this is a team that's made up of these failed projects. And I would love to see them going to the Champions League because I think Odegaard probably would stay at Real Sociedad because Real Madrid, until they let Modric go, Modric has another year contract, so he's going to stay at Madrid for another season, I suppose. So I don't think they will try and bring in a guy that wouldn't have much space right now. But another season there, especially with Champions League, I would like to see that. Then you have Getafe. Don't really trust them to be any good in the Champions League. Not because they have a decent team. They've been pretty good in Europa League. They have to play against Inter now in the final 16, their final 16th game. But I don't know. They don't really get me the chills when I think about them playing on Wednesdays. But then there is two giants that are fighting for one spot, and they're Atletico Madrid and Valencia. Atletico Madrid is a team that this year, they sold Griezmann, they brought in Joao Felix, Hermoso. They used their money quite, smart in a smart way. But the problem with them is, I think, is that the kind of football that Simeone is trying to propose and is trying to implement. He's been trying to do that for years, and I think he had the players before, but he doesn't have them anymore. Now, a guy like Diego Costa, when he was at his prime, he was perfect for that game plan that Simeone has in mind. So very physical, scaring the opponent, and that doesn't happen anymore because Diego Costa can't really do much on the pitch anymore. They have Morata. That I think if I have to pick the least scary guy in the world, it would be Alvaro Morata. He doesn't have that physicality. He doesn't have that presence against the defender when he can, give that shoulder bump. It doesn't have that, and it doesn't work, in my opinion, for Simeone's football. Joao Felix, very similar. Still young, very good player, but he doesn't have that hunger yet, in my opinion, to play this kind of football. Gabi was fundamental for Simeone, especially in the run to win La Liga. Then, he's now gone. I think he plays in Dubai. And then Godin, the captain of this team, he's gone as well. So those are all players that will bring in a certain level of aggressiveness during a game, and that's what Simeone's game plan most of the time focuses on. So this very rough football that's made up of, like defensive football, but then players that show the other team that, if they want to win, they have to get over the dead bodies, for a matter of speech. So they don't have that anymore. The only one left is probably Koke now from that kind of initial Simeone team. And if I look at the chance they have to make it in the Champions League, I don't know if it will actually be beneficial for them. I think rebuilding and a year out of Champions League could actually be good because they already have the young talent in there, with Joao Felix, as I said, and Jimenez, and a lot of them. Renan Lodi, incredible fullback in my opinion. Another one of these left backs that I think are going to be extremely good for years to come. So overall, this is a team that already has some pieces. But I think a year in Europa League without the pressure of the Champions League will actually be beneficial for them. So, to be honest, I'm not going to say that I want Atletico Madrid not to qualify, but I'm saying for them, I think they wouldn't be upset with, a fifth or sixth spot. However, I think eventually they'll probably be one of the teams that make it out of the race, qualifying for Champions next year. And then we come to Valencia. So Valencia is a good team, right? I saw them in the Champions League a year ago against Juventus. They are right. They are decent solid team, but they're nothing more than that. They don't really have that striking talent, in my opinion. The only good prospect that they have, I would say, is Ferran Torres, that I think is expiring next year. So he's probably gonna be gone by the end of summer. I wouldn't be surprised if he goes to one of these like upper level teams, like could be Atletico Madrid, could be Borussia Dortmund or Tottenham, one of these middle tier teams that could come in and pick him up, because I think he has a great future ahead of us. He's still very young, so the investment probably is more suited for a team that doesn't have the need to win now, like Borussia Dortmund or Tottenham, just to make some examples, compared to a Real Madrid. But I think he's the kind of player that you should look forward to watch and to see how he develops. But apart from him, I don't see much talent in there otherwise. So very similar to what Atletico Madrid could do. I think not qualifying for this year Champions League would be actually best for them to start. Keep playing this younger talent. Europa League is a great factory to play your younger players and to give them some of that international experience that they definitely will need in the future. So if I had to pick here, I would say my favorite choice would be Real Sociedad. Who I think are going to get there is probably going to be Atletico Madrid and Real Sociedad. But please just let it be Real Sociedad, because I would love to see all this, cast out being in Europe and showing off and prove wrongs the doubters that told them that they were just busts. Another episode comes to an end. So I'm glad that we're getting more and more leagues coming back, because having all these games all at once, at every day a game, it's going to be insane, but insane in a good way. So I can't wait for that. The Liga season is shaping up to be very interesting from now until the end, because both of those teams are, extremely good, and the difference between the two in the table is minimal. And then you have this incredible Champions League run, and I'm looking forward to see how those top tier teams come back, because we've seen Bayern how they came back and it seems like they didn't miss a bit. However, considering that the Champions League is what's more important for these teams at the end of the day, and when Real may be out with the feet out the door already, Barcelona still has everything to play for. And I'm gonna be actually looking at how form wise how this team react, to see if they all come back like Bayern did, dominating, or if it's more of a gradual improvement of the form over the course of the season. So looking forward to that. As I said, we'll talk about this in more detail. We're gonna start previewing some of the games on Wednesday. I'll bring you, of course, the game of the week and all the other bits that people who've listened to this podcast are used to hear from me. It's gonna be a storyline as well. And on Wednesday, we're also going to be talking about the Serie A, because that league also is coming back. That's in a week time, but this weekend there is the Coppa Italia. And now more than ever, that's going to be an incredibly important trophy for all the teams involved. We'll talk why, and we'll start focusing on the form of the teams and how they come back, and the players that could be important for Milan, Inter, Napoli, Juventus, and all the other teams in the Liga, and so more and more to come. So stay tuned. There's gonna be a lot of football going around, and there's gonna be a lot of me talking about it. So if you listen on Apple Podcasts, please rate and review, subscribe. Same on Spotify. You can find me on Instagram at sports_with_Frank, and on Twitter at sportswithfrank. So that's all for today. I'll see you again on Wednesday. This was the Sports with Frank podcast. I've been Francesco. Stay safe, and I'll talk to you soon.